Hey guys, so to begin with, 5 years ago, when I was 18, my parents asked me to leave and kicked me out of the house because, according to them, it was more important for my sister's boyfriend to move in with her. I'm 23 now, female, and have an older sister, Chloe, who's 4 years older than me. When she was 22, Chloe got pregnant with her boyfriend and had to move back in with us. She had been working for a couple of months at the time, but she hadn't saved enough money to afford to raise a baby and live on her own at the same time. 3 months into the pregnancy, she decided it would be better for her boyfriend to move in as well. She felt it was important for the baby's father to be around for proper development. Don't even ask me about that. I wouldn't have had any issue with it, but she was living with us, and I felt it was unreasonable because our house wasn't that massive. I thought my parents would decline her request, but I had no idea they were planning to agree with her and kick me out instead. A couple of months later, my parents told me they wanted her boyfriend to move in, so I would have to give up my room. I was shocked since I really hadn't seen it coming. I asked them where I was going to stay, and that's when they clarified that they wanted me to leave the house altogether since I was now 18. I had decided to take a gap year, so college was out of the question. I could have moved in with my grandparents or friends, but I didn't understand why I had to move out at all. It was my home too, not just my sister's. I tried to fight with them, but they told me I was an adult now and had to deal with life on my own. I explained that Chloe could share her room with her boyfriend, but they said it wasn't possible because she wanted her own space as she got bigger. I suggested maybe he could live in the living room, but apparently he had a back injury, so that wasn't feasible. Desperate not to leave, I even suggested I could live in the living room instead, but they told me it was unseemly. After a while, it became clear they just wanted me gone. I definitely blame my parents for their behavior, but I also thought Chloe was being unreasonable and entitled. Not only did she want her boyfriend to move in, but she also wanted a separate room for him, forcing me out even though I wasn't ready. I had a huge fight with my family the day I was told to leave, calling them all selfish and saying I never wanted to see them again. I packed my things and called a couple of friends to help. I spoke to my grandparents, but they were skeptical about having me live with them since my grandpa was sick. So I decided to move in with my paternal grandparents. When they found out why I had to leave my parents' house, they were outraged and stopped speaking to my parents altogether. I was very depressed. I had always thought I had a good relationship with my family, and I didn't understand their treatment of me. The day after I left, Chloe sent me a letter through a friend. It was bizarre, and I still have it. In the letter, she explained that she had convinced our parents to kick me out because her boyfriend was a flirt and they weren't in a committed relationship when she got pregnant. She was afraid I would be a risk to their relationship. I couldn't believe she was willing to have a baby with someone she didn't trust. It was crazy. I had half a mind to tell her she had no self-respect and that it was pathetic she was still with a man like that. But I decided to say nothing. Being with him was punishment enough for her. I wanted nothing to do with her or my family anymore. They had clearly shown me where I stood with them. Not speaking to them seemed best, so I started trying to move on with my life. I had never been inclined towards academics, which is why I took a gap year to think about my future. I'm a self-taught musician and can play guitar and drums. I realized during that year that I wanted to pursue music even if it wouldn't make much money. I started playing small gigs and was reliant on my grandparents for money, which took a while before I could afford an apartment. I eventually landed more serious gigs, and at the beginning of this year, I auditioned for a music producer. I got the gig playing guitar for a film soundtrack. I hadn't shared any of this on social media, but somehow my parents found out. 2 days ago, they showed up at my door. They congratulated me and said they were there to make things right, not just because we were family, but because they needed my help since Chloe's boyfriend had abandoned her and they were broke. I didn't invite them and I was too surprised. They told me Chloe was struggling with her flower shop and needed my support. They hoped I wouldn't turn them away, but I found it laughable because they hadn't been there for me at all. They were only here because Chloe needed help now. I went back inside, retrieved the letter Chloe had sent, and told her to read it aloud to our parents. She refused, so I read it myself. My parents looked shocked and embarrassed as they realized they had been manipulated. I told them that whatever was happening now, they deserved it, especially Chloe. She had chosen her boyfriend over a good relationship with me, and now she was suffering the consequences. Chloe started. I slammed the door shut and told them to leave. Since then, I've received messages from her friends saying I was insensitive. I'm wondering if I was wrong for telling her it was her fault her boyfriend left. Update 1: I've made up my mind. I'm not apologizing for anything I said. Chloe's behavior was bizarre and pathetic. She deserves this. It's not my responsibility to help her. She has her flower shop. She can make the best of it. My parents act like maniacs at the first sign of trouble. They panic and have no fighting spirit. When my dad lost his job years ago, everyone freaked out despite having savings. They borrowed money from my grandparents and never returned it. Update 2: last week, my family showed up and close friends kept texting me to apologize. I didn't. After a few days of no contact, my parents called from a burner phone. They told me they had decided to cut Chloe out of their lives. I was shocked but still wanted nothing to do with them. I explained that I had no intention of rebuilding our relationship. They assumed I wanted them to cut Chloe out so I would help them in the future. I didn't hint at that at all. They started yelling, saying I was misleading them. I decided to hang up and block their number. I might even install apps to screen calls. I've spoken to my grandparents, and they agree with my decision to cut them out of my life completely. Update 3: after my family's unexpected visit, things felt surreal. My parents, now desperate, had assumed I would help them because they had finally acknowledged their past mistakes. But I was resolute in my decision to keep my distance. They had made their choices, and I wasn't going to be their safety net. In the following days, I received numerous messages from my sister's friends insisting I should apologize for being insensitive. Their words felt like a weight, but deep down I knew I had no obligation to take on their burdens. I spent time focusing on my music, pouring my energy into rehearsals and upcoming gigs, pushing aside the chaos that had once consumed me. Then last week, my parents tried to reach me again, this time using a burner phone. They told me they had decided to cut Chloe out of their lives, claiming it was what I wanted. I was taken aback. Why would they think that? I hadn't indicated any desire to reconnect. My decision to separate was final. They were still trying to manipulate me, twisting my actions to fit their narrative. As I hung up, frustration boiled inside me. I blocked their number, determined to protect my newfound peace. I spoke with my grandparents, who understood my need to distance myself. They supported my choice, reminding me that I had worked hard to rebuild my life. I was ready to move forward, focusing on my music and my happiness, finally free from the past that had held me captive for so long. Update 4: a few weeks passed and life began to feel more stable. I continued to work on my music, taking on more gigs and even collaborating with other artists. The thrill of pursuing my passion overshadowed the chaos from my family. Then one evening, as I was unwinding after a long rehearsal, I received a message from one of Chloe's friends. They informed me that my sister was in a tough spot, her flower shop had failed, and she was struggling to make ends meet. They asked if I could reconsider helping her. I felt a pang of guilt, but then I remembered the choices she had made and how they had affected me. I realized that while I could empathize with her situation, I wouldn't be responsible for her decisions. I sent a polite reply wishing her well, but reiterating that I couldn't step in to support her. With that, I closed that chapter of my life. I focused on what truly mattered, my music and my growth. I learned that sometimes cutting ties was the healthiest choice. I was finally carving out a future that felt right for me. As I stepped onto the stage for my next performance, I felt a sense of freedom wash over me. I was ready for whatever came next.